Hello. Today we are discussing the book Predictably Irrational, which mainly talks about how to use the thinking of behavioral economics to avoid spending traps in life and make ourselves smarter. You might have experienced something like this. You received a 10,000 yuan year-end bonus this year and were quite happy, but upon hearing that your colleague received 20,000, your mood instantly worsened. Another example is black pearls, which were once unnoticed, but when placed next to other expensive jewelry, their price skyrocketed. People also tend to line up for trivial free gifts. These seemingly absurd phenomena actually contain deep truths about behavioral economics, and that's exactly what we'll be discussing today. The behavioral science mentioned here actually refers to behavioral economics, a branch of economics. Traditional economics assumes that people are always rational, whereas behavioral economics primarily studies people's irrational side. Today, we will explore the main content of Predictably Irrational from three aspects: common scenarios of irrational behavior, the causes of such behavior, and strategies for avoiding it. First, let us look at when people exhibit irrational behavior. The most common situation is when people think they are getting a deal. Many businesses offer promotions like second cup half price, and upon seeing this, many people who originally only wanted to buy one cup of milk tea or one snack end up buying a second one because they feel like they are getting a bargain. But when they calm down, they realize that they spent half more than they originally planned. When faced with several options, the brain immediately calculates which one seems like the best deal, forgetting the original need. This doesn't just apply to physical items. People also behave irrationally in terms of intangible things like emotions and attitudes. Moreover, people tend to compare things that are easy to compare, while they often avoid what is hard to compare. That's why businesses can easily trap people. To illustrate how strong this irrational tendency is, the author mentions an event from 1993 when the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission first required public companies to disclose executive salaries. The purpose was to allow public oversight to suppress executive pay, since at the time the average executive salary was already 131 times that of a regular worker, which could easily cause social conflict. But unexpectedly, this move had the opposite effect. Executives who had no idea what their peers earned now had a comparison. As a result, they started competing, which ultimately led to an overall increase in executive salaries. So far, the average salary has risen to 369 times that of a regular worker, more than triple what it was before the disclosure requirement. Through this case, the author points out that the effects of comparisons go far beyond buying an extra cup of milk tea. If you focus solely on comparing yourself to others, it can lead to significant dissatisfaction in life. For instance, many people who were originally content with their lives might feel unhappy after attending a class reunion, wondering why someone who once wasn't as successful is now doing better. This mindset of constant comparison can make people focus on what they don't have, leading to a sharp decline in happiness. Another common irrational behavior is that people are easily influenced by first impressions. A funny example is that when baby geese first hatch, they treat the first thing they see as their mother and follow it everywhere. Similarly, in life, we often use our first impressions as a standard for evaluating future encounters. For example, if the first time you bought coffee, it cost only 5 yuan, then seeing a cup of coffee priced at 15 yuan might make you feel it's too expensive. But if you never knew the price of coffee to begin with, you wouldn't have this feeling. This is because our brain uses our first experience as a baseline for comparison, not our actual preferences or needs. Businesses are well aware of this and use it to market products. For instance, early on, black pearls had little value, but when placed next to other expensive jewelry, people naturally began to believe they must be valuable as well. As a result, the originally overlooked black pearls suddenly seemed incredibly appealing. Even today, high-end restaurant rating platforms use the term black pearl to designate top-tier establishments. Apart from being lured by bargains or first impressions, people are also easily seduced by the word free. The allure of something free is powerful in many situations. For instance, in hotels, many people casually take free toothbrushes, slippers, or shower caps, even though these items are of poor quality and might never be used. Simply seeing the word free makes it irresistible. In some cases, people might even give up better options just to get something free. For example, you might have seen signs outside stores offering free gifts if you spend a certain amount. You might not be interested, but there will always be someone who is. They see the word free, go inside, and realize that while the gift is free, it requires signing up for a membership. Some people will pay for the membership without thinking, still believing they've gotten a deal. This is the power of the word free. In addition to these, there are many other natural human weaknesses that lead to irrational behavior, such as procrastination, the endowment effect, and choice overload. Procrastination makes people delay tasks until the last minute, the endowment effect makes people overvalue things they own, and choice overload makes it hard for people to make decisions when faced with too many options. All these irrational behaviors can significantly affect our lives and reduce our happiness. So, why do these irrational behaviors occur? Behavioral economics research shows that people often overestimate their rationality, believing they can always make rational decisions. However, rational thinking is often influenced by the environment, especially in unfamiliar situations, where people struggle to think clearly and instead let irrationality drive their choices. For example, many people experience brain freeze and forget everything when speaking in public, which is a case of environmental pressure lowering rational capacity. Additionally, the emergence of irrational behavior is related to the misalignment of different norms. There are two kinds of norms in the world: social norms and market norms. Social norms are governed by moral obligations. For instance, when you go to your parents' house for dinner, you don't pay them, and when you help a neighbor take out the trash, you don't charge them. Market norms, on the other hand, are governed by financial transactions. For example, if you ask a lawyer or a doctor to lower their fees, they might feel insulted. What's interesting is that it's easy to switch from social norms to market norms, but it's hard to go back from market norms to social norms. For instance, if your neighbor has always paid you to collect packages, and one day they stop paying, you might feel uncomfortable. This shows that once people adhere to market norms, they tend to overemphasize money and overlook the beauty of social norms. Through the lens of behavioral economics, this emotional attachment itself is an important part of irrationality. For example, the CEO of Haidilao, Zhang Yang, says that he never evaluates his employees based on profit margins, because he wants to avoid situations where employees try to save money at the expense of customer service. In other words, Haidilao takes social norms into account rather than purely following market norms, creating a sense of belonging and recognition among employees. So, how can we avoid irrational behavior in life? The author suggests a concept called pre-commitment mechanisms. This involves setting boundaries and creating accountability structures. For example, many of us have deadlines for work or study, which act as a form of pre-commitment. But even with such mechanisms, many people still procrastinate due to difficulties with self-control. So, how can we address this? One way is to adopt a system that helps implement this pre-commitment. For instance, if you want to avoid overspending at the end of the month but struggle to control your spending, you can choose a financial plan that automatically deducts a portion of your paycheck at the beginning of the month and invests it. However, pre-commitment mechanisms alone are not enough, because there are many other irrational situations in life. For example, we mentioned earlier the endowment effect, where people overvalue things they own. Take, for example, when you want to sell a piece of furniture, you might think about the effort it took to bring it home with friends, rather than thinking about the value of selling it and enjoying a nice meal. Many businesses use this psychology by offering 30-day money-back guarantees. After taking an item home, people often become attached and are reluctant to return it, even if they don't really need it. In such cases, the author suggests adopting a non-ownership mindset when evaluating objects. Try to separate the transaction from your emotions and remain as neutral as possible. In addition to the endowment effect, the author advises us to be on guard against the placebo effect of price. What is the placebo effect of price? The author and his colleagues conducted an experiment where they tested a new painkiller with volunteers. In reality, the painkiller was just vitamin C capsules. For the first group of volunteers, they were told that the pill cost $2.50. The volunteers received an electric shock before and after taking the pill, and almost all of them reported less pain after taking the pill. However, for the second group, the price of the pill was lowered to 10 cents, and only half of the volunteers reported any pain relief. This demonstrates that price had a placebo effect on people's perceptions, making them irrationally believe that a more expensive product is more effective. In everyday life, the placebo effect of price is everywhere. People often judge whether something is worth it based on price alone, allowing irrationality to take over, thinking that expensive equals high quality. But in reality, this is just a mental trap that can easily lead to overspending. In conclusion, Predictably Irrational shows us that people often make decisions that are not in their best interest due to various irrational behaviors. The book encourages us to recognize these behaviors, understand their underlying causes, and adopt strategies to avoid falling into these traps. By doing so, we can make smarter decisions in life and improve our overall well-being. Another method suggested by the author is to avoid using credit cards to make purchases, as they reduce the pain of paying by separating the moment of enjoyment from the moment of payment. When you swipe a credit card, you don't feel the immediate cost, and by the time you receive the bill, the initial excitement of the purchase has passed. This lack of immediate emotional feedback leads to overspending. Using cash, however, involves directly seeing and feeling the money leave your hand, which can curb unnecessary spending. Furthermore, the author talks about the anchoring effect, the tendency for people to rely heavily on the first piece of information they receive when making decisions. This explains why luxury brands often display high-priced items to set a reference point. Even if customers don't buy the most expensive item, they are more likely to purchase something still expensive compared to what they might have considered before being exposed to the initial high price. To avoid the anchoring effect, it's crucial to be aware of the way initial information influences your decision-making process and to actively question whether you really need an item or if you are simply being swayed by the price or brand positioning. Finally, the book encourages us to foster self-awareness. Once you recognize the triggers of irrationality, you can set up systems to counteract them. Whether it's using a budgeting app, avoiding online shopping late at night, or even setting personal rules for spending, these small changes can add up to a big difference in our financial well-being and overall satisfaction with life. In summary, Predictably Irrational provides a fascinating look at how our minds work, showing that we often don't behave rationally, even when we think we do. By understanding our mental biases, we can make better decisions, avoid common pitfalls, and ultimately lead happier, more fulfilling lives.